Welcome to Driving the Line, the pursuit of safety, where we talk about the real issues out on the road, focus on safe driving, and learn industry best practices from your hosts Kenny Ray, Mike Bohan, and Jim Seibert, in the hopes that by driving the line, we get more drivers home safe and sound. This podcast was made possible by Marsh McLennan Agency.
Well, welcome everybody to Driving the Line. This is Mike Bohan, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Kenny Ray. We're minus Jim Seibert this morning. Guarantee he'll be back with us, but for this episode, we're going to be minus Jim, and I know you're probably disappointed to hear that, but we'll get him back on the next episode for sure. And today we've got a special guest with us and a topic that we're going to highlight. And our goal is going to be to gain a little perspective on what it's like to be a woman in the trucking industry. So I'm going to introduce our guest here in just a minute. But first, let me start with just stating the obvious. The trucking industry can be a challenge, to say the least. As our listeners well know, we've got long hours on the road, in the office, depending on whatever your role might be with your company. We've got hard deadlines, stress-filled days, you name it, we've got it, and it can be a grind for sure. And when you look at the industry as a whole, you can see that just by the numbers, it's a male-dominated industry. But what about the women out there who are working every day, just like their male counterparts, in that same grind? Well, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, in 2022, women made up around 8% of truck drivers and sales delivery drivers. So that's a little bit watered down when we think about what our typical over-the-road trucking company is truck, tractor, semi-trailer. So when you look at those Class A drivers, the number of women in trucking in those driving positions jumps to about 14%. And then in those same statistics, women also accounted for about a third of the C-suite executives in transportation as well. So that's kind of where our guest comes in to help us out, to share her expertise, and to give us an idea of what it's like to be a woman in the trucking industry. She's been in the business for nearly a decade. She's an executive. She's been a speaker all over the country. She's a mentor. And over the last couple of years, she's got a couple of great awards and some accolades, like being named one of Women in Trucking's Top Women to Watch and St. Louis Business Journal's Most Influential Businesswomen of 2023. It is my pleasure to introduce my friend, Kristi Randall with Ardor Express Incorporated. Welcome, Kristi. Glad to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the invite, especially about one of my very passionate subjects, women in trucking.
Absolutely. And Kristi, I've known you for a long time. And for that entire amount of time, you've been in the trucking industry in various roles as you've worked your way through your career. But your entire career hasn't been in trucking. How did you find yourself in the trucking industry? How did you make your way here?
So yeah, my background is primarily human resources, and it was primarily human resources in professional services industries. You know, I started in banking and then healthcare and legal and CPA firms and just kind of in those professional services. What I did was I did a lot of consulting for a lot of businesses in St. Louis. I'd go in and start up an HR department, or I do their leadership or strategic plan, or do some kind of training and development things for these companies. And it'd be, short-term 2 to 4 year projects. And that's how I ended up at Ardor. In 2014, they were looking to actually start an HR department. So I was referred by another client that I'd worked for and helped them implement an HRIS system. And they needed a kind of payroll and benefits person here at Ardor, just part-time, just somebody to kind of kick it off. And I interviewed with the owners, Ardor and Tom, and I was like, oh my gosh, I really want this. And we hit it off and I started. And yeah, it was supposed to be part-time and it was supposed to be temporary. And 10 years later, I'm definitely not part-time and definitely not temporary.
Well, neither one of those things stuck, the part-time or the temporary, right? I mean, it was probably a pretty quick change after you got there. I feel like they recognized the value, your value there, and that probably changed pretty quick, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it did go pretty quick. for both of us. I just fell in love with trucking in general. I was like, oh my gosh, I found my people. So yeah, it just got real, very easy for me to just say, yeah, I'm going to stay here.
Yeah. Well, you are a kindred spirit to Kenny and I because you love this industry. And we say that all the time on this podcast. We're a part of this industry. We love this industry. We love to support the people in this industry. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on here, because I knew that was just going to be very clear when you're speaking, that this is an industry you care about. You care about a lot. You've given 10 years of your life to it, and you've been very successful at it. And I guarantee you, to our listeners, you're not going to meet somebody that works harder than Kristi Randall does. I've known her for long enough now, and I've watched her as she's grown in a career. And I'm telling you, nobody works harder than she does. And nobody cares like she does either. I mean, we got a lot of good folks in this industry, but she cares about the people in this industry. And Kristi, I guess my next question, and that kind of leads into this question, is, as you started your career and as you've just really worked hard to get to where you're at, what have been some of the biggest challenges you've had as a woman in a male-dominated industry, as you're carving out positions and making your company better? What are some of the biggest challenges you've come up against?
I'm sure that what I say is not going to be popular with a lot of people, but you have to embrace the stereotype of whatever your audience is. If you're in front of an audience of truckers and they're all, hey, sweetie, honey, embrace it. There's nothing wrong with that. But you also got to maybe be the mom. You got to maybe be the hard-nosed HR executive or safety director. You gotta be able to embrace whatever role you're in at that time. And that's been, something that I learned. And I wish I would have learned that earlier in my career, because it applies to every industry for women, but especially in trucking, because it is such a male-dominated world. I remember the first industry conference I went to in 2014, and one of the presenters stood up or asked all the women to stand up, all the women who were working, not the spouses, but the women. And there was maybe 15 in a room of 300. And last year at that same conference, it was much, much higher. It was really neat to see. So it's grown a lot as well over the past 10 years that I've noticed.
Those stats I gave, the 14% of drivers in the Class A, and then the third of C-suite executives in transportation, all of those stats, I think I actually got those off the Women in Trucking website, but they got it from the U.S. labor statistics. Those are all trending upward, as far as women in those roles, and which I think is a good thing. I think there's especially if there's women who want to get into this industry, they should be able to do so and be successful. And I think you're a good example of that for sure.
I think one of the things that I've really tried to do is educate just everyday people. All of my personal friends know I work for a trucking company. They know Ardor Express. They'll text me pictures of our trucks or trailers all over the country. And I think that it's just educating the public for the life of a truck driver, and that a truck driver works 70 hours a week, where we're complaining about 35 or 40. Just making that education out there. And then also just pointing out that there's so many positions in this industry for women, including truck drivers, including shop personnel, including safety, every position. And I think that the women of my generation kind of helped break that barrier, saying, we can do this, and not being afraid to go out there and try and prove ourselves. So I think it's going to trend even more over the next 15 years or so.
And to that point that you're making, as the numbers begin to increase, is there a different feel from, say, 10 years ago when you got into the trucking industry to now? Is if there's a woman listening to our podcast right now that wants to get into this industry, is she going to have the same struggles or maybe the same challenges that you had 10 years ago, or do you think it's changed?
Oh, it has changed. It has changed a bunch. When I started, again, Carter and Tom hired me for a purpose, and HR was desperately needed. We all recognize that. But I just remember my first day, I was like, oh my goodness, this is going to be a challenge, because there were just a lot of guys in there and a lot of things that were not very HR friendly. And now it's completely different. I mean, just knowing that, how many women work here, how many women are truck drivers with Ardor Express, how many, just it doesn't even, it's become so common, at least at this company, that we don't even notice it anymore. Like, oh yeah, okay, well, there's a woman, there's a man, I don't know the difference. Which is what I think it should be. It should get to a point where you don't even recognize that there's a difference.
Yeah. And I don't want to put you on the spot here, but where do you guys line up as far as your stats on percentage wise on women drivers versus men drivers just within your company? Do you know roughly what that is?
Yeah, we're actually 12% women drivers right now. It's gone down a little bit. We were a little higher last year, but we're at 12% right now.
So is there whether it's a driver that's coming in that's a woman, or somebody that's coming to the office to work in safety, to HR, to dispatch, whatever it is, do you have, either yourself personally or the company, have kind of an approach to help them acclimate into not just your company but into the industry if they're new to the industry? I mean, do you take it, are they treated the same? Is everybody treated the same when they come in, or do you have some specific ways that you might treat a woman coming in as a driver or in one of those other roles?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely try to keep everything equal. Again, if you can't tell a difference, then that's the ultimate goal. Everybody's equal. But we do have different safety protocols for our females in the office and our female drivers. We make sure that they feel comfortable, that they feel safe, that if they're feeling any kind of nervousness or apprehension, there's so many outlets that they can go to. And what's really, really nice is all the males in our office are so supportive. And they all wear pink for all the girls and bring us flowers for International Women's Day. And it just, they make sure that we are supported, but also that we're not belittled. There's nobody in this office that has a problem reporting to a woman or taking instructions from a woman. We've got an amazing team here, and it's been very, very nice to be a part of that growth.
There was an article, I think it was an interview you had done, I think it was with Women in Trucking, and one of the questions they asked was about some challenges you went through, and you had said to break that mindset of feeling like an administrative assistant all the time or something like that.
Yeah.
Is that something that that has gotten easier for you over the years? Because when I look at Kristi Randall, I don't see that at all. But obviously that was an internal struggle that you might have had. Is that something that gets easier the longer you've been in the industry?
It has. It definitely has. I mean, and that's just part of a person's personality also. Like me, I'm a servant leader. I'm always going to ask somebody if they want a cup of coffee. That's just who I am.
That's a fact.
But putting myself into that situation when others don't, that's the internal struggle that I had. But yeah, I mean, at first, not people here at Ardor Express, but when I would go to other customers or vendors or things, it was still kind of that feel like they would direct their questions to the male in the room. And then the male in the room would then kind of look at me and say, okay, Kristi, what's the answer? So that was definitely a struggle for the first few years, but not at all anymore.
Well, I know that you speak at conferences and you've been involved with every aspect of your company as far as recruiting, things like that. I guess my next question is, what are you guys doing to get, I mean, I know you actively recruit all people to drive for you, that kind of stuff, but have you got a recruitment process to get more women into your fleet, to get more women into your office? Is that something that you actively look to do?
Yes, definitely. For drivers, we focused a lot on teams, like husband and wife teams, especially if, the husband's been out on the road for many years, and now the kids are grown, and mom or wife doesn't know what to do. And we're like, hey, come out on the road with your husband, become a trainee with your husband. And we've got a lot of teams that have done that, and they've enjoyed it. They get more time together. They get to see the country. And it's quite interesting that the safety statistics, the female members of those teams tend to do a little bit better.
Yeah.
So for drivers, we definitely try to recruit a lot of female drivers. We do, like I said, a lot with the teams, but also with solo drivers, just saying, hey, we're here to support you. We're here to make your lives easier. We talk to our shippers and receivers saying, hey, we've got a female driver on your account. What's the protocol for restrooms or, security or just basic human needs? I think that's the thing that the industry is really lacking for men and women, is just the shippers and receivers that just don't realize that truck drivers are humans and they can't just pop off at McDonald's to take a break real quick. There's not truck parking. So I think that's at least my goal for the next few years, is to really educate shippers and receivers on that. But as for women in the office, same type of thing. We try to, when we have a new hire in the office, whether it's a male or a female, what I try to do is put them with kind of an onboarding mentor. Might not even be in the same department. We might be hiring a customer service person and the safety manager might be their onboarding mentor. But we try to do it based on kind of personality and communication styles. And that's just somebody that they can go to and ask, hey, where do I find the paper clips? Who's this person and where do I find them? And a lot of times it's a woman and a woman, but a lot of times it's also been a new hire as a male, and we put that person with an onboarding mentor who's a female. And that's definitely been very successful too.
I don't want to jump around too much, but I just, for the sake of time, there was something that I wanted, because I've been witness to your career. I've known you since you were in the industry, so I know some great things that you've done. But I wanted to ask you personally, since you've been in this industry, what you feel like your greatest success is. Big or small, could be an individual thing, could be a company-wide thing. What do you feel like this is the thing? This is the crown on my career, at least for now, because I know you're not done. But this is it. This is my greatest success to date.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I feel this is so cliche, but I feel like every day is a success. I think so far, one of my biggest successes is building our amazing new terminal in St. Louis. It's anybody who wants to come to St. Louis and get a tour of our terminal, please just ask these guys for my contact information, and I would love to show you around. We have a 70,000 square foot terminal here in St. Louis, and it's very driver focused. Again, back to shippers and receivers. When drivers go into a shipper receiver, they're trying to figure out where to park. It's a gravel parking lot. They got to walk around and be careful of getting hit by other drivers, or they have to go through a warehouse and getting honked at by a forklift operator to find a shipping office. They've got to kind of navigate where they need to go. But here, we made the driver entrance as the main entrance. All the rest of us go through different entrances. We've got a dog park. We've got a patio and barbecue grills. We've got a fitness center. We've got tons of soft seating locations for the drivers to kind of hang out. We've got a movie theater, showers. We give them soap and shampoo. We've got laundry that's free. They don't need to pay for that. They're already out on the road. They don't need to pay for laundry. We give them laundry detergent and dryer sheets. I mean, we really want our drivers to know that they are our focus. Our logo is the Truckers Company, which we developed in the past 10 years as well. And that is right now, that is my biggest satisfaction, is knowing that our drivers know that they are valued. It's not truck 6584. It's Jim. It's Sally. It's whoever their name is. Our dispatchers do not refer to them as numbers. When a driver calls in and they say, "Hey, this is truck 6584," I'm like, "Your mama did not name you 6584." So it's just, I really feel that that's been my biggest accomplishment, is just making the public and the drivers know that they are the most important people and that we have to take care of them. I'm going
Yeah. I know there was a ton of work that went into that building, but you said it, it's like you feel every day is a success. So when you see those drivers come in and they get to utilize that building that the company created for them, and it shows, hey, we value you as a person, not only as a driver, but as a person. Yeah, that's got to be a success every day. I mean, that you see that. So, that to me is, I think when companies do that, and they realize that they need to value their drivers and let those drivers know, whether it's, the building or just in how they treat those drivers, how their operations treats them, how safety treats them, I think is a huge thing in this industry. Because you had mentioned it, when they're out on the road, they don't always have a lot of comforts, and shippers, receivers, things like that might not be the most hospitable places for a driver. But certainly when they call back in and talk to the office, or they get back to the office, they kind of have that feeling of, hey, I'm home. I'm loved here. I'm welcomed here. I'm valued here. So. Well, Kenny, I'm monopolizing things. Jump in anytime you want to. I know you're sitting there, and I know you've probably got questions for Kristi.
Man, I am thoroughly enjoying this conversation. Kristi, I've been looking forward to this for so long, and you're fulfilling every single hope and expectation I had for this podcast. I literally could just listen to you talk all day long. And you mentioned one thing about the various roles, and we tend to think about women in driving roles, but you mentioned all the different ones that are available to females now in our industry. And I'm the son of a truck driver. I've been in this industry literally my entire life, and I remember times as a little boy, I would go with Daddy to the yard. It may be his day off or something. And they didn't have this in the 1960s, so they didn't have technology. So he literally would go to the yard to find out what his dispatch was. And there might be a secretary. The terminal manager might have a secretary, but 100% of everybody there was a male. And like Mike said, now we go to, and you mentioned, we go to conferences, and I'm active in the Texas Trucking Association, and we have got not just females that are filling roles. These aren't people that are just checking a box that, hey, we've got a designated number. These are women that are excelling as safety directors, as the owners of companies. I've got a couple of clients that the name on the side of that tractor, it's the woman owned, and I absolutely love that. I was thinking this morning in preparation for your, I tried to think of all the different roles and ones that I think were still a little underrepresented. I don't see a lot of female mechanics, technicians, and I'll tell you something real interesting as a side note to make a point about this. I ride motorcycles recreationally, and I use a Harley-Davidson dealership in Longview, Texas. They have a female technician there, okay? Nobody else will touch my motorcycle but her. Not because she's a quota. She is simply the best there is. The owner of that dealership will not let anybody else touch his motorcycle but her. And I wonder, some of these young ladies, and there may be some young ladies listening to your comments that they say, you know, I'm mechanically oriented. I like fixing things, but I don't really plan to go to college. And, you know, there's a real future in being a diesel technician, working in a truck shop. And that's one thing. And then the other one, I see women drivers. I don't see a lot of female owner operators that have taken that step and are actually owning the company, you know, and I'd like to see more women be willing to jump out into that role. But those are just comments. But I do have one question for you. You mentioned I'm a retired state trooper, and the whole idea of workplace violence is it's a topic dear to my heart. And you mentioned twice about the security of y'all's female employees. And I think trucking companies need to realize that there are still some concerns we need to have in this industry to keep these women safe, either if they're out on the road or if they're at the office. That there's always that there's a much higher propensity of females being injured in workplace violence than there are men. And so I'm just tickled to death that y'all make that a focus and that you brought that up. That's a very, very worthwhile topic. But I just thank you for being with us today. And what a great show. And anything of any of the things I mentioned, if you want to comment on those, I'd be grateful for you to do that.
Yeah, I mean, especially about thank you, Kenny, especially about the working in the shop and the technicians. That's one of the things. One of the things that I think has helped me in my career here is that I have literally done every single job in the company except drive the truck. Nobody wants me to do that. Sorry, I leave that to the experts. But I've been out and I've worked on the trailers. I've replaced tires. I've welded in panels. You know, I feel that that's important, that to gain the respect of the people that are working with you, you have to know what they're doing on a daily basis.
Amen.
And it was so much fun. So, you know, I strongly encourage, you know, the women that want to try something new, you know, go out there and try it. If you don't like it, okay, well then try something else. But you can't be afraid to just give it a shot. And I've got a daughter, and that's what I've taught her. And that's what, you know, my husband and I have taught her, you know, go try it. If you succeed 80% of the time, well, guess what? That's a passing grade.
That's right.
So go give it a try, and have fun with it. So yeah, I've got goosebumps. I strongly encourage women to go out there and say, hey, you know, I'd like to kind of know a little bit more about, I'm mechanically inclined. I'd like to go try it out. Go find one of those vendors, one of those large vendors, and give it a shot. Or, you know, if you're also so inclined, go out there and build your own business, become a over the road repair technician. You know, that's a huge need in our industry, is to get qualified and I don't even know what the right word is, but non-crooked repair vendors.
No, that's a good comment. I want to share one other thing. You reminded me of something about women trying different roles. I come out of the tanker industry, the hazmat industry is my background, and the company I was with, we had 21 terminals across the U.S., and we had certified driver trainers at each one of our terminals. And those were the mentor drivers that would help new drivers coming on. And they were the cream of the crop. They got picked by their terminal managers. We put them through a very extensive training course, including adult education, where they would learn how to teach. And they got special tractors. They had a special uniform the other people did. There were a lot of perks that went with it. And we would put on one class a year to train the new certified driver trainers. And one year, the new class walked in, and there was a female in the class, and we had never had one. And she, not only was she a professional truck driver, her terminal manager had said, she's the best I have. I want her training everyone else. And it was such a joy and so refreshing to have her perspective in there. And now, and I've been gone from there for 5 years, they have multiple of those now. But she was the trendsetter. And that's the point. There's still some areas in our industry that probably we need some breakthrough, some pioneers to do. And like you said, I just encourage them to do that.
I completely agree. I mean, and I think that's the fear, and I do think that every generation of women has gotten a little bit further. My mom taught me how to properly shake a hand when I was in 8th grade. She's like, you are going to learn how to do this. It's not going to be a dainty little girl handshake, and then I did it with my daughter. And I think that every generation we're getting a little further into that equality. There's still a long way to go. And there's absolutely some roles that, need to stay separate. Football player, well, maybe not, and that's fine, it's fine. But don't be afraid to just get out there and give it a try.
Yeah, agreed.
And as we're talking, I know this is the focus of our conversation today is women in an industry like trucking. This is not a men against women conversation, though. This is truly just bringing an emphasis to the great job that women do in trucking, the challenges they have, and really needing more of them in our industry. Because I tell you, I've in present company included with Kristi here, and Amanda's listening in. I know we're missing out. I think if there's companies out there that aren't actively looking to say, we need more women drivers. We need to hire more women in the office, that kind of thing. Because I tell you, and I know you mentioned you're active in the Texas Trucking Association. I am in Missouri. Our safety director with the Trucking Association here in Missouri is a woman. I deal with women day in, day out, business owners that are consultants, safety directors at trucking companies, as Kenny said, owners. I mean, they're some of the best in the business. And I think that's what we're trying to highlight here with having Kristi on and just sharing her experience and her expertise. And really, this leads me into Kristi and we kind of touched on this a little bit before, but you said it, but what is your encouragement to somebody out there that may be listening to this that said maybe they're a driver and they want to grow into a safety director position, or maybe they've somehow stumbled along our podcast and they're not in the trucking industry, but they would like to get in. How do you encourage that female to say, I want to be a part of this. I'm going to give this a shot, where you're saying, give it a try, give it a shot. How do you encourage them to do that? Is it just literally just saying, I'm going to take a step? Is it finding a network of people to talk with and help her along the way? She's getting into this industry. What's the key?
For me, it was confidence. It was courage. Again, so many women are afraid to take that step. They don't want to fail because they're like, oh, see, I tried and I failed. So what? That's okay. So you got to have the confidence and the courage that, maybe it won't work, but just give it a try. But if you wanted to specifically get into trucking, let's say the office side of things, first thing is learn the terminology.
A lot of terminology in there.
Yeah. My first day, they said, we have a reefer problem. I'm going, oh my gosh, do we need to do drug testing? What's the deal here? And so, I felt like, okay. And of course they were trying to goad me into things. And there were a few other terms that might not be appropriate for public television to share. But, learn the terminology. There are tons of websites out there that do kind of trucker vocabulary. Learn that, speak the language. It's kind of like, learning Spanish or Polish or whatever it may be. So I strongly encourage you to do that so that when they're talking about a lumper service, what that means. And then just, start doing research on the web. 10 years ago, there were not podcasts about trucking and safety and things like that. So now there's so much information out there available. And then the next thing that I would encourage anybody to do is, if you know a truck driver, ask them if they have a passenger policy and see if you can do a ride along with them. Go out and see what it's actually like. Go to a truck stop. Sit in the back in the sleeper and see if you can actually handle the APU running and the noises of the truck stop. Go, through a shipper receiver and make sure, that's allowed, but make sure that you see what you have to deal with every day. I think that that's very important. And if you don't know any truck drivers, well, come on over to Art Express. We'll take you out for a ride. So those are what I would recommend.
What does so I think we're getting close on time here, but I want to ask you this. What does the future hold for Kristi Randall? What are your goals? What are your plans? And then I guess a follow-up to that is, what do you feel like the future is for women in trucking? Where do you see that going? But I want to know what have you got any big plans over the next 5-10 years? I mean, what do you want to see for yourself first?
I absolutely do. And the two things are going to kind of align together. I've been at Art Express for 10 years. The owners here have multiple other companies that they own and operate as well. And I've had the pleasure and privilege to create a team here in the office that I have now made my job obsolete at Art Express. That we have such an amazing staff that they don't need me anymore. So I'm still with Art Express. I will be, for a long time to come. But what I'm going to start doing in 2024 is really getting out there and hopefully speaking at a lot of conferences and maybe even some schools and some trade schools and things like that to kind of encourage anybody to join this industry and really just kind of help maybe some of those struggling owner operators with maximizing revenue, learning what kind of habits they can change to increase that profit margin a little bit. Definitely safety topics. What do we need to do to keep our office safe or the truck drivers safe? Definitely compliance and regulatory things. So I want to go out there as part of Art Express and kind of help some of those other companies. The other thing that we're doing is, again, back to my HR background, is we have noticed, and I'm sure so many other companies have as well, that finding staff in the U.S. has been quite a challenge since the pandemic. So we've actually started a staffing agency to help trucking companies with back office support, payroll services, compliance, dispatch, even customer service, accounting positions. So I'm helping to run that and really want to focus on helping, again, those trucking companies that might not be able to find that employment base, helping them fill those positions. So I'm going to have a pretty busy next couple of years.
Yeah, little busy. It sounds a little busy. The schedule is going to be pretty full, it sounds like.
Yeah. But I mean, truly, I always love talking, so that's never a problem. But anybody out there that's listening, just definitely reach out to me. I would love to share any kind of expertise or give an opinion or any pointers. I would always be available for anyone.
So cool. And if you're listening today, keep your eye out for Kristi's name on some conference agendas, because she's going to be out there speaking, it sounds like. That's really cool. Well, Kenny, any other questions for Kristi before we let her have her day back here?
I just want to thank her once again for being our guest today, and what an honor and a privilege it is to have you. And I'll just say this, and I'll punt to Mike and let him close. But I told you I'm the son of a truck driver. I've been in this industry my entire life. I've been actively involved for 36 years. And I'll tell you this, our industry is infinitely, I don't even have the vocabulary to describe how much better our industry is today because of the female influences, the female leadership that we have in trucking. Our industry is quantum leaps better today than it was when I started. And the women in this industry have had a profound positive effect. And I'm grateful for every single one of them that have stepped over that line and said, I'm going to do this and I'm going to make it better, because they have. And you're one of the leaders of that. And we're grateful for you. Thank you for being with us today.
Aw, thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, Kristi, you're not just a shining example of a woman in trucking. You're just a great person and a good friend. And I appreciate you being on. So you are our second guest on the podcast, by the way. So wow. You're blazing a trail with us in more ways than one here. So we greatly appreciate you being on. Thank you for your time. And to all of our listeners out there, we thank you for being with us as well. Stay safe, and we'll catch you next time right here on Driving the Line.
That's all the time we have for this episode of Driving the Line, the Pursuit of Safety. We hope you enjoyed our discussion, and thank you for listening. You can rate, review, and subscribe to Driving the Line, the Pursuit of Safety on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other app you're using. You can also follow Marsh McLennan Agency on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Until next time, thanks again for listening. Drive safely, everyone.